Hey, all you Arizona lovers. This is the Finding Arizona podcast, episode number 378. I'm your host, Jose. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Today's episode is with Kameron Davis, who is the creator behind PWR Creative Studios. I want to say thank you to Kameron for allowing me to be one of his very early ongoing podcasts that he can be a part of, because he himself has his own podcast called Creative Questions, and I hope and encourage you guys to go check him out and his illustrative kind of studio that his all of his designs are under Create Studios, and it's very cool. So he's an incredible guy. I actually met him at Drink and Draw, which is a local event here in the Valley, and I hope that you guys are interested in checking him out because he does a lot of cool things. It's very, very much a conversation about being a creative and also being a parent while being a creative. So I hope that you guys who are parents are listening and watching and want to just take part of this. If you are a creative, please let me know about you. I love having creatives come on the show. They are very much welcomed here, and they're very much the same path that I am on. I want to be a creative that can encourage others to do the same thing with parenthood, going out on their own, adventuring out on their own, and hopefully we will meet in the future, and that will lead me into a little bit of the business side. You can hear every episode of Finding Arizona Podcast at our podcast website, www.findingarizonapodcast.com. We make it easy for you guys to connect with us through social media. That is all under Finding Arizona Podcast. Next up, if you want to send us an email, findingarizonapodcast@gmail.com. If I sound a little winded or a little tired, it is because I have just finished up a bratwurst eating contest over at the Four Peaks Oktoberfest. It was a gauntlet of huge bratwurst, and I was just I did the best I could, but the reigning champion came back and had to defend his title, and he actually defended it very well. He had they gave us 5 minutes. He ate 5 bratwurst. I could only down about 3.5, so I kudos to him. I took a picture with him. He was very much a cool guy, and he had the whole gimmick on, lederhosen, had the hat, had the championship belt rocking. So 2-time champion now, 2 years in a row. I wish him nothing but the best of luck in the next year's event. I think I'm gonna just sit this next one out, but it was very fun to participate, and one of our creatives actually asked me to be a part of it because they were trying to keep it more of local celebrities, and it was really fun just to be even considered into that category. So I really much did the best I could. I wanted to make it a fun challenge for myself. It was not easy, and I'm very much full and tired. So get to do things like that with this podcast is a lot of fun, and that's something that you'll find in the vlog that is available on YouTube. If those of you who want to get a little bit more personal with myself and my wife who run the podcast together, I encourage you guys to go do so under YouTube/Finding Arizona Podcast. And on top of that, if you want to listen to more episodes, they're also available there. We also have a blog that's running with the website and a newsletter. Please sign up, please subscribe, please let us know what we can do better, please let us know what you want to see next, and we will try and make that happen. All in all, little guy had a lot of fun watching Dada do what he did, and then the family's doing well. I just celebrated my 4th anniversary with Brittany. It was very, very fun, and life is very much in a fast-moving pace. And next up will be the holidays for myself and the family. First is going to be Halloween, next is going to be Thanksgiving, and then the following Christmas, and then little guy turns 3 in January. So please keep up with us, please stay in touch with us, and if you, hopefully we'll see you in the future. If not, wishes to all of you and you who are watching. Thank you for being a part of this journey, and we will head right into this episode number 378 with Kameron of PWR Creative Studios, and we will see you next time. Kisses, hugs, and belly rubs. Bye, y'all.
Is a no woman.
She's ambitious.
She is juggling life.
Oh, she is high performing.
She's self-made.
Definitely busy.
Woman supporter.
Cares about the rooms that she's going into.
Building an empire.
Definitely working in a male-dominated industry.
She is competitive,
and cares about impact.
And she's inspired by the word no.
Oh, completely relentless.
She is self-made.
She is a badass.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Finding Arizona podcast. I'm your host, Jose, and as always, we bring in special guests every week, and today is no different. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very excited about this gentleman standing in front of us. He is the founder and creator behind PWR Creative Studio, and his name's Kameron. Kameron, welcome to the show.
How's it going? Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited to have you because just a little bit behind the scenes of what you and I have met before already. So we have kind of a previous relationship going on. And we met at an event called Drink and Draw, where creatives come together to have some scheduled time to drink and draw together. And it was a lot of fun. And we've met and we've had dialogue and conversation about certain items that we'll also pick up in this conversation. But I want to give everyone an opportunity to meet you, the person behind the business. And I'd love for you to answer the question that we always ask first from everyone, which is, give us a little bit of your origin story. How did PWR become to be?
Ooh, okay. That's a great question. PWR design. So PWR design is kind of something that it's a little cheesy, but it came to me kind of out of like a dream, in all honesty. My original career was I went to college to be an aerospace and mechanical engineer.
Nice.
And then I ended up like picking up Photoshop along the way, like while I was in college. So I was like, oh, this is a nice little piece of technology. I really enjoyed using it. So I just made flyers around campus. And I was like, "Ooh, who can I make flyers for?" And then I just did that. No charge. It was just fun. It was just creative outlet. So I did that, and then I graduated from college and went to my first big boy job. And I was like, that was childish. I don't need that anymore. Who needs that kind of stuff? And I went and I graduated in 2015 and didn't end up picking up design again until 2018. Okay. So around 2018, I was feeling like kind of low, kind of depressed, kind of empty. The rat race really wasn't fulfilling me. And my wife was like, why don't you start designing again? You really had fun with that. Like, why don't you do this thing? And so I was like, that's a good point. So I started like designing for my friends, making logos, illustrating, just having fun with it again. Yeah. And then 2020 came and I got laid off from my big boy job, my career. And I was like, I honestly don't like this. I didn't like being an engineer. I didn't like all the, I came in and I was like, let's change things. Let's make things better. Let's fix all this stuff. And it's just, aerospace is not like that. Everything's slow. Everything's like, well, we designed this in 1967. So if we ever try to change it, it's going to take millions of dollars to change anything. Yeah.
And time and just like years to do it. Because it's already been improved. It's already been through, It's all
of that bureaucracy and all of that. So it was just, I just wasn't happy. It was just not fun. It was, I thought I was going to be there solving creative problems. And that's where it kind of hit me. And my wife again in 2020 was like, oh, why don't you just do design full time? And I was like, of course I did all the crying and all the letting go of it and mourning it. That's a big, I spent 6 years going through design or going through engineering school. And she was just like, how about we just move on? And I was like, okay. And then I started doing more research into design and what all comes out, what all is in design. There's so many pieces of it. There is a very strategic, creative thinking piece of design, and that really caught my attention. So that's where I got laid off, and then we took all the money out of our 401k and we just were like, let's freelance for a year. Let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can make any money. It doesn't really matter. Let's let this be college again. So this was my opportunity to learn, to network, to grow as much as I could. And again, this is during the pandemic. So what could you really do? It was basically that. There weren't jobs being given away. So it was kind of all we could kind of do. So I did that. I reached out to, this is my key. I was like, let me find people who do this, reach out to them and see if they'll sit down and have a conversation with me where I can kind of like pick their brain.
Yeah.
So many people were so down for that it kind of like blew my mind. I was like, awesome. No one would like, why would they want to help me? Exactly. So that's kind of like, that was the beginning steps of like power and like figuring out what design actually was and like how to build a business around it. So from there, I went and I did. And that's the great thing about design, because sometimes if you go and get a full-time job, your studio doesn't have to close. You can still do freelance on the side. Like it's always something. And that's one reason I picked it. Like I was like, this is something that you can always do. So we get through that year of that 401k money. It runs down. I didn't end up building the network that I needed. It was building network takes time. So it was just one of those things where it's like, that's where I learned that like network's important. So if I go get a job, I still need to be building network. So I went and worked for a branding agency at the end of that year of freelancing. And then it was this past May, I got laid off from there. So ever since then, I'm in freelancing full-time in my business. And that's kind of like, the origin story's long. Like it's been a long kind of like drawn out process of like making a decision, trying it, figuring out if it's right, and then just sitting in it and like seeing what the next day kind of brings. So,
well, I'll let you in on this. So you've kind of created this really interesting kind of path for yourself, and it's one of those things that's like the pandemic has really been kind of this really strategic point that has affected everyone, and that's something that we've always kind of preluded once it happened, which is like meaning that we asked this question. I'm always in my mind of like, where is this in two places? One is 2018 when we had the recession the first time, and then in for the pandemic, the 2020, and it's interesting to kind of see how people either float from one thing to another, which my wife went through with her career, or how many people stuck it out, like how many people pivoted to find their resolution in how they perceive themselves as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, and allowed themselves to be like, hey, look, I bring this one thing very, very well, and I'm going to make this my stable floating device that I'm going to ride this wave of this horrible time to allow me to float through into the next, era. And I have always found it interesting in having these dialogues, especially since the pandemic. We've been doing this through the pandemic and just kind of understanding of like looking inward, looking at yourself and allowing yourself like, what makes me happy? What is going to bring me the most joy? Is it this career, or is it this business, or is it something else? And so for some, it was something else. And for others, it is mostly like, I'm going to pivot. And then that's because we deal with a lot of entrepreneurs who have businesses that they love. But it's just so wonderful to kind of hear those stories, because for me, it's like, I'm very much in the path of I make this podcast kind of still as something that I love to do as a passion project. We do fairly well as far as making it kind of a business, but my day job, which I like to say is my now like my other job, I am a landscape architect. And so one of my things is like, I went to school for landscape architecture and found some way in through all of that mess. I had found points of creative juices, creative moments through it. And people who've listened to this podcast have already spouted off about this, but just to give you the total, download of like what's been happening in my life. Went to school, was screen printing, just to learn how to screen print from a guy.
So cool. Screen printing is so awesome.
It's awesome. It's so fun. And so basically he was a screen printer, local screen printer for businesses. Met a bunch of business owners, was like having dialogue with them as they came in and wanted shirts and other product to be made. And I thought it was a cool idea to like record them, like, because some of them are really like interesting, some of them are really fun personalities because they have like this really interesting story. And basically it was like, hey, look, major stuff, you want to record what you just told me, because I think it'd be great to have for not only your business but also, to have it out into the world, and so you can use it as publicity or marketing. And a lot of them came back, yeah, let's do it, let's do it, let's do it. And so for me it was just kind of like this weird like pivot point of like, oh, I'm doing now podcasting world.
Yep.
And so I was like, okay, well now I'm this now. And so I have all these different moments. It wasn't until later on where it's like you brought up networking, where it's like, oh yeah, I have a guy for that, or I have a person that I know that does that, or what a small world, I just met someone who does this. And yeah, it's just affected my world ever since. Now I'm doing landscaping for a commercial company, and I also have this. And so it's been a whirlwind of stuff of like meeting people, podcasting, working, having a family. And so I appreciate your story just because it runs the similar vein of like my own.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's just like the same thing kind of. My wife is that business manager for me, where she's like, maybe you should do this, or maybe you should do this.
Yeah.
And we've made very, very big moves because it's just like, oh yeah, maybe you should do this. And I'm like, okay, well, let's try. But yeah, I really appreciate you telling us a little bit about how it all went down. And I'd love to ask you more about what we talked about too. It's like you brought it up. Family is a big part of you and what we first generated our dialogue at Drink and Draw. And you having your young one, and I'm having my young guy, and just kind of like fatherhood in general, just what we were talking about, a lot of what meeting each other. How has fatherhood affected not only your creativity? I'd love to hear that aspect, but fatherhood in general just affected your time and your commitment to your business, to your life, to everything.
That is, that question, like when you started talking about fatherhood, it gave me chills. Cause it's a huge river that runs through like all of this.
Yeah.
Because I will say, like, my son completely, like, having my son changed my life. Like, it was in that same time of like being depressed and not feeling fulfilled. And before I had all this time and I didn't fill it with anything.
Yeah.
It was just empty. And I would sit around for days. I would binge Netflix. I wasn't like doing much at all. And then that I have my son and I'm like, wait, there's like another human here. Like, I have to like, if I want to show him what it means to be alive and be in the world, I don't know if I can just hide out in my apartment anymore or hide out in the world. So that's where like things started to change. And like nowadays I'm dad. And then maybe the second half of the day I'm working, and then maybe I go back to dad at the end of the day. So like we're homeschooling our son. So
nice.
I might be teacher for the morning. Like, so it's just it's so intertwined in the business and life. And my wife has her own business too. So we're just moving pieces around to make sure that we can be there for him and get like do the things that he needs and guide him in the way that he needs in life. Like I just felt like something I don't know if I've ever said to my dad is like, I wish he was around more. Like I feel like my dad thought it was enough to just like go to the football games or take me to practice or take me to school. And it was like, well, it probably would have been cool to just like chill more, like spend more time playing or spend more time on video games or would like just being around. My dad was in the army. So he did 20 years in the army. So it was very regimented. He would be up before we went to school and then he wouldn't come home till like 5, 6 at night. So what's really left? Like we get you for 2 hours at the end of the day. And that's supposed to be like, I mean, raising your kids, like everyone else is raising your kids at that point. And my mom was a school teacher. So it's kind of the same thing. So me and my brother kind of like the rest of the world kind of raised us in a sense. I think there's a lot of millennials who kind of feel that.
For sure.
Because both parents had to kind of be gone to be able to make enough money for the household.
Yeah. Two
So I wanted to
income
change
base.
that. Yeah, I wanted to change that for my son. So that's
Yeah.
kind of what's going on there. And in doing that, it's just brought so much like life. Like that kid is he loves being alive. Like
That's awesome.
when you're around a human who loves being alive, it rubs off on you. Like, and then
yeah. Like that's the whole, like, again, I'm like thinking about my own son, and he's right now he's at a point where he's like coloring a lot more.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I realize a lot of the time is that the joy that he gets from the pigments and all the colors and just having it on the paper rather than caring about whether it's in the lines or it's, the level of like joy that he gets from just creating and just having it on the paper rather than anything else being kind of daunted by, oh, there's these other lines that represent a picture. No, I just want to put color to the paper. That's fine with him. And so that level of like joy of like understanding like living life and just getting a joy out of seeing colors is just so beautiful from my perspective of like, yeah, he's changed my view on a lot of things.
For sure. Yeah. It's just baffling. And my son loves learning. Like, I didn't think that like they always paint kids out like they don't want to learn, but it's like maybe sometimes it's what we teach them. So like the way we homeschool is like very open.
Yeah.
My wife will like ask him every week, what do you want to learn this week? And so he'll have like 2 things that he supplies that he wants to learn.
Yeah.
And so we'll find stuff to kind of go around that. And he'll sit and watch like mini documentaries about like animals and stuff. He loves to learn and tell people about what he's learned. So
that's awesome.
So and hopefully like me and my wife are also starting to read more in front of him because we want him to like have a passion for reading too. Yeah. So it's these little things that like, it's our responsibility to put in front of them that I don't know if like, I'm glad that I'm doing now, but I don't know if like that happened for me. Like, so I want to make sure that those things are done. And that sometimes comes with like having to put boundaries on yourself as an adult, like
absolutely.
Having to have some discipline as an adult. And I know for a lot of like parents that is hard. Like you go and you're the parent now. So why should I have to be the one who's disciplined? But if we want to show the little ones how to be disciplined, we got to kind of do it ourselves.
Absolutely. So. I'm just had this conversation yesterday with my own father who kind of brought to my attention of like, given so many choices, and especially like as they're younger, you kind of want to give them more discipline in the fact that it's like maybe too many choices overloads them, and dwindling the choices down so that it is more appropriate for them to be like this or that, or if it's like that sort of thing. And so for me in particular, I think you brought up the level of responsibility. For me in particular, I was just like, for our own family dynamic, when the pandemic hit and we realized we were going to have a child during it, we had to make a lot of choices personally. And, career wise, I was the one who was at a stable, more at the time, it was more of a stable position as I'd been with the company, a smaller company that did landscape for approximately, I think, 4 or 5 years almost going on. And, she was just starting out in a new job. And for the understanding of like, who's going to be home, because we didn't want to give him to a babysitter or someone who's going to we didn't want someone else raising our child. So that was one of the
100%.
One of the boundaries that we hit was like, we don't want someone else to be his mom or dad. Like we want us to caretake for him. And, it came down where it's like, it really put me in a hard position of like, okay, I think it's going to have to be me because I, as much as I want to push and advocate for myself of like, I have this job that's really nice and that's going to help, it pays well and it does all of these things for us. at the same time, I had to take the leap of faith of knowing that my own trial, like everything that I've been through, every career choice, everything has led me to this moment of like, I've always wanted to be the dad that's like, the, my dad was like yours, where he was very busy and they've tried their best to bring together a two income household.
Yeah.
And so for him, his was more of like being on call. And he was this kind of, how do you put it? Like a mechanic for
Okay.
big machinery. And so he had to be on call and they call him out to go to places that are farther away than like 2 to 3 hours away, where he had to
Oh
go
wow.
and fix things. And um, unfortunately, he did his best with, being at the games and being a part of our lives, and he
Mhm.
did everything that he could possibly to make sure that he knew, or we knew, that he loved us and that he was gonna be there for us. The unfortunate aspect, is time, having those moments of like, oh, I wish
Yeah.
my dad could be here to do these things with me and help me, hang out with me, whatever it may be. Then we moved to the Indian reservation just before high school, for myself. And then he lost his job. Like, he didn't have a career that he did that. So I spent more time with him.
Wow.
And
Mhm.
those were the moments that I held on to most, because he I saw a different man in him, which was, I need to
Mhm.
provide for my family no matter what position I'm in. And so even though he didn't have a job, what he did was, okay, I know how to make food. Everyone eats. So I'm going to become they called him the hot dog man. And
Mhm.
he basically started out making hot dogs and hamburgers, selling it, and then transitioned into a food truck, where we
Wow.
helped him in the food truck during the summer months, my brother and I. And, we built a business until I graduated high school and went off to college. And then they moved down here to Phoenix with me. um, but yeah, it was like one of those things where it's like I saw him in a new light. Whereas
Mm.
you don't have to be afraid of going from one path to another. And so for me, it was like, once I understood what was happening in my realm of like, I'm having a kid, things
Mhm.
are in the world aren't great, but you can make something out of nothing. You can make something of yourself and provide for your family. That's when I made the choice of like, okay, I will be the one who's at home with him. I will find something that'll allow me to pay bills, work, and be a stay-at-home dad and be his primary caregiver. So, that's what I did. I found a place, and I, continue to do the podcasting too, because it allows me a level of creativity and freedom that I enjoy, still being a part of the community. It allows me to get out of the house and interview people. And it allows for a lot of things that I didn't think I had before. But now as a dad, I'm reflecting on a lot of different aspects of my life that it's like, man, he's changed a lot of my views of what I do and how I do certain things. And so, yeah, he's he's a big part
That's
of
awesome.
yeah, he's a big part of it. And but yeah, it's like you said, change isn't it has to be a ultimate like end all be all scary thing. It can be helpful to provide a new view on the world and a new view on yourself. So,
Yeah.
kudos to you to like take fatherhood by the reins and like really try and grasp every aspect of it. And kudos on you for wanting to like be a stay at home teacher to like to teach him at the same time, because I know I'm at the point where like, dude, you're smart, like you're a smart kid. I need to provide you another outlet of like learning education wise, because you're reaching my limit, bro, of like how to teach you on certain things. But I just
Yeah.
was like, I was thinking to myself, I was like, he's going to be so smart and he's going to want to do so many different things. And he loves reading already. I'll leave him for 10, 15
That's dope.
minutes and he'll be in his room with a book and like looking at the pictures and pointing at things and saying them out loud. And like, it's those moments where you're just like, all right, I think I'm doing the right thing. I think I'm doing good.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. Those moments are the best. The best. And I
I
will
love it.
say, like the homeschooling and the teaching, my wife is like a natural teacher. Like
Oh, wow. Nice.
that she has. She is a childbirth educator.
Okay.
So she wrote her own curriculum for that.
Very cool. Very
so
cool.
it just comes like second nature to her, and she kind of
Yeah.
found like a curriculum to. I think it's like Blossom and Root. Like they make curriculums for teaching your like homeschooled kids.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so my wife breaks it all down, and then she like plans out his week, and she'll be like, well, we got this, this, and this on the schedule. You're going to be at home with them, do those activities. And it's like, they're not crazy. Like, especially like he's doing pre-K kindergarten stuff. It's just like, learn to cut. Like, so we'll practice cutting or today we did sand tracing. So I'll draw a letter in the sand, and then he'll copy that letter. And
awesome.
That's the lesson for the day, and then he gets to play in the sand afterwards.
That's awesome. So, I love that. It's like that makes so much sense, and that sounds like such a great way to go about it. And like going to education is just like I also want him to learn some cultural aspects, because I come from a unique background of like, you know, I'm half Puerto Rican, half indigenous, and so the two cultures in itself, from being language based also to like how much they have deep rooted heritage like aspects to them, where I'm just like, I want to be able to give him things that I didn't really get. I didn't learn Spanish from the get-go, because when my dad was here, when we were living, you know, away from home, like away from his family and away from my mom's family, he was still kind of learning English, like still learning like vocabulary words and like sentence structure. So I was learning hooked on phonics, and he was learning with me, sort of thing. And that was one of those things where it's like, yeah, like we learned together, but you know, he didn't really reinforce Spanish, nor did my mom speak her native tongue to me. So it's just really one of those things that like, I want my son to have those things a part of him, and I'm going to have to be the one who not only goes out of my way to learn it along with him, but also reinforce like, these are important aspects of your life. They're who you are, and they're what you make up, as far as our family goes. So I'm like, there's so many things that I have to do or like want to do too. It's like, so just behind the scenes, like my mom and I want to make a Hopi coloring book for him, and hopefully be able to sell it too at the same time to other kids with the Hopi background and traditions. And so that's bringing together my mom and I, because we are so interested creatively in doing this together, that it's just something like that's never come up before in our own path and journey. Was like, like she's always been this woman of, she loves creating her own art, which is, you know, she loves to sew. So it's just like one of those things like, oh no, we've never crossed paths. This is the first time we've like, yeah, we should do something together like that. And so, dope. Yeah. But I'm taking this whole podcast on me, but I want to, again, I think it's really fun that you and I share a lot of different opportunities like that, kind of like our connections are here, and like all over the place. You have a podcast of your own, and I've been listening to it, and I love what you bring to the table, and just bringing creatives, I want to say, are always a unique bunch, and they're always fun to talk to. So tell the audience what your podcast is about, and give them some synopsis of like what you try to provide in each episode. Okay. So to be like, podcasting is something that I really enjoy for probably the same fact you do, like just getting to meet people and conversate and like get in the weeds, and like those are the best situations. So I also was very nervous with people. So I started podcasting to like help with that. Help with like reaching out and like working on some of those nerves. Because once I'm comfortable with people, we can dive deep. Yeah. But that beginning part, I wanted to really work on. So this is my third iteration of a podcast. That's fine. Yeah, for sure. But
what I have now is what I've always wanted from the beginning. So it's called Creative Questions. And really my goal is it's random question based. So I will go and I'll research and look up a bunch of just random questions. Also like questions that go with the creative that I'm interviewing, and then just off the wall questions. Is a hot dog a sandwich? Is cereal soup? Like just random stuff just to see how people are thinking. But the main goal is, I feel like with creatives, a lot of time we're judged on our end product. Like what we make is what people care about sometimes. So I wanted to create a situation where you had to show your personality. Yeah. And so you had to be there. It was going to be random. You didn't know what I was going to really ask. And then you kind of had to off the cuff be yourself. Yeah. So that's what it all kind of boils down to. It's really there to just have a good time and show your personality. And I think what people get to leave with is themselves on a plate, which they might not even have. Yeah. Like, because some people are so like into their work and into what they make that there might not be anything else like what they made in this podcast that exists. So Absolutely. That's really my whole goal, is to just have fun with people, have a good time, talk to new people, and then just show off personalities that don't really get showed, like different types of people that don't really get the platform to speak. Yeah. So I don't say I just do all, like, it's not just Black people, but I mostly stick to like marginalized communities, because I feel like in design, there's very little like other voices being heard. Yeah. So I want to take my time to give back to the people who need a platform to be heard. So
that's really great. I mean, for like, it's really fun episodes that I think that bring out some of the most introverted types in particular, because there are some creatives that are really very introverted, and I've learned that during my podcast. But I'm also like just saying, like, who you deal with in general too. It's like those artsy, like really in the books, like just really don't want to expose themselves. But I think having those creative questions really draws down the wall of like, oh, I didn't never ask myself, or, oh, that's a really interesting question. I think it's so great because it just really shows who they are, and it shows their personality. It really does get them out of their shell a little bit, because it's so an off topic kind of question, or it's like
all over the place. Yeah. And that's the problem that I had, is like where it's just like conversational. With like my last iteration, if you get, some people have a hard time just being conversational, especially I do most of it through Zoom or Riverside, so online. So people have a hard time being conversational sometimes. So I find that the questions are good when things slow down a little bit. They're good to hit with a random question to get like more energy. So it was harder when I was doing like these long, like, okay, we're going to just like have a conversation. And then they would be like, I don't know what else to say. And so I'm speaking 98% of the time. And like, I'm like, I want more of you on the screen. So how do I do that? That's kind of where the concept came from.
Oh, that's great. I mean, you're doing a really well bang up job, because the couple of episodes that I have seen, you really get a really unique insight from the creatives that you have on. And I have to say too, it's like, being that you draw your inspiration or bringing out marginalized groups is fantastic, because again, it's another unique factor of like where they provide or where they get their creativity. A lot of the times comes from their own heritage or their own culture, or what they are in you know, developed as like they grew up in. And you don't see that until you ask those certain types of questions or understand where they come from, because I think people just see the art and they're like, oh, that's just really cool art. Whereas it's like for you and I, we both understand it's like it comes from somewhere. It comes from a place of like deep rooted background, and you have to draw that out to really understand, you know, the person.
Them. Them. Their style and like where they were like them. It's kind of crazy. Like the last episode asking about like a smell that you reminds you of childhood, and it brought forth like Filipino food, like street vendors. And I was like, Dang, that like I did. It's just sometimes not expected, but you're so right. They're steeped in these cultures that don't get a platform most of the time. So it lends to like some really interesting conversations and some turns that you never expect to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And so like I'd love to just I think what I creatively right now I'm thinking, okay, we're going to finish up this conversation about the this podcast, but then after this episode's done, I'm going to hit you with something that we used to do with everyone, which is like this kind of I had this 50 question rapid fire that I used to do with everyone before
Oh
an
wow.
episode. And it was just again to draw the curtains, like draw down their perspective of, me and like have some fun and build some energy. So I'll ask you those. They're kind of like fun questions. I
Okay.
promise you'll have a good time. Um, let me go ahead and continue on with just kind of some goals for you because we're reaching that point of like I like to talk about your beginning and your middle where you're working on now, and now we're reaching goals for the future.
For sure.
What for you would be something that you goal wise that our listeners can help you out with for this year or for next year, and anything for your business? Is there something that ultimately you would love doing or working with?
Um, man, I just right now I've just been loving freelancing.
Hmm?
When I in the freelancing world, I do a lot of branding work.
Yeah.
It's really fulfilling to work with, especially small, medium-sized businesses, because usually the creator has a lot of passion and like I always say, it's like they have a sock company, but they have all this passion about socks. So I just
Yes.
have so much fun working with like brands and like different people like that. So freelancing, if there's people who need that type of work, I'm always open to like helping, even like consulting. Like if you just need to have a conversation about your brand and you're unsure,
Mhm.
that's always like I always love more opportunity to get to do that and kind of kick
Okay.
it in, understand people. When it comes to podcasts, just listening, like it is like I feel like creatives are like everyone has a little bit of creativity in them.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's open enough to be able to listen to and have a good time with. So if you could even take a second to go and listen to an episode and just see like what's there, because I think you'll have some fun with it. But yeah, those I really just want to grow my freelancing and then grow the podcast. Those are really the two biggest things that
Yeah.
I'm working on right now. Just having so much fun. That's the one reason I love freelancing, because I get the most random work. Like
Yeah.
I built last week I was working on motion design of a hummingbird. So I
Oh,
had to make
okay.
the wings flap and make it was a logo animation. So I just fly around the screen. It was really fun. And I just love to get
Nice.
to do like those little pockets of like randomness where you're like, how are you gonna pull this off? Let me go do a bunch of research. Oh,
Mhm.
figured it out. And then you kind of put it on the screen.
That's awesome.
So
I love that. Again, it's like it's that building your network. So I did this episode once with a creative like videography group. Like
okay.
it's called I think it's Bear Den, and they really they do a lot of like intro videos for
Okay.
YouTubers and stuff like that. And so
Yeah.
they're like, what can we want to do something with you, me, like the podcast. I was like, well, I could use an animated logo. That'd be something. And so they're like, yeah, let's do it. And like they figure it out, and we use it a lot now with our social media of like this
Yep.
animated logo that they built for us. And I cannot say enough of like, if you can figure it out, or if like you have the resources to do it, it's like just like, or if you have someone who can do it, just ask, like, again, figure out a
Yes.
way to work together. Because I am so thankful that we have that animation, because it is so dynamic and beautiful, and we
Yes.
use it a lot. And so it's like I don't regret working with them at all, because
Oh
they were
yeah.
fantastic. But yeah, I hope that our listeners will be able to help you out with the goals that you have. I have no
For
doubt
sure.
that I will be working again with you. I want to do some stuff with you as well. Like I want to do another episode or something together, because I think it'll be fantastic. That I think as two podcasters, dads, creatives, people
sure.
like our encounters are going to run the gamut of like crossing paths in certain aspects. So I have no doubt we're going to cross paths, but I look forward to doing something with you in the future, creatively and fun like that. And I have no doubt that I encourage everyone to go over to your podcast and listen and subscribe and give you a thumbs up on your episodes. So this is the chance to promote your podcast, all of the places where they can find you online. I will give you the reins. Go take it away, Kameron. Where can we find you on social media and online world?
So I really just use my Instagram and my YouTube. So on Instagram, you can find me at pwr.create, pwr.create. And then on YouTube, it's PWR Create. There's no dot. So awesome. PWR stands for power. So that's kind of where that goes. So PWR Create, pretty much you can find me anywhere. So
awesome. I appreciate it, man. And that's, again, for those of you who don't already like, not already clicking right now, please go do so, because it is a fantastic podcast. It is something that I listen to now regularly, and I will be hopefully doing an episode with you. My fingers are crossed because I want to do it. I really do. And so that being said, we'll reach our little outro here. You can listen to every episode of our podcast at findingarizonapodcast.com. We make it easy for you guys to connect with us on social media. So that's under Finding Arizona Podcast under everything. And last but not least, if you want to send us an email, findingarizonapodcast@gmail.com. Let us know who you wanted next, and we'll try and make that happen. And last but not least, we always say kisses, hugs, and belly rubs to our four-legged friends, and we will see you next time. Take care, y'all.